Okay, let's unpack this. When you think of a private school, you probably think of high tuition, nice facilities, maybe a bit of prestige. And on the surface, I mean, what could possibly be more charitable than education? It seems like it should be a total slam dunk for getting tax exempt status.
It absolutely feels like a slam dunk.
Right.
But then you run up against the Canada Revenue Agency, the CRA, and you're dealing with these highly specialized legal definitions of what a charity even is.
Huh.
Suddenly, running a successful, high-quality school it's really only half the battle. You have to prove, and I mean rigorously prove, that you're not just a business.
But that you're advancing education for a clear public benefit.
Exactly, for the public benefit.
And that's the real tension here, isn't it? Because tuition, by definition, implies a private benefit for the students who are paying. So our listener, the learner, sent us this amazing stack of documents, a real goldmine, that details the 10 most common bureaucratic pitfalls. These are the specific, often really counterintuitive reasons the CRA rejects private school applications for charity status.
And that's our mission for today. We're going to use this list as a fascinating and honestly sometimes hilarious checklist of rules you just didn't know existed.
Yeah.
It's less about your academic merit and much more about whether your legal docs, your curriculum, and your whole structure can pass this kind of public benefit purity test.
A purity test. I like that. So if you want to know how Canadian charity law sees teaching, this list is basically the blueprint.
It really is.
Okay, so let's jump right in. The first major section we've called the content test. This is all about your core mission and what you're actually allowed to teach.
And we start with reason number 1, which is, it's the big one.
Mm-hmm.
Your governing purposes are not exclusively charitable. This is, legally speaking, the ultimate pass-fail. There's no middle ground.
So what happens if a school has, say, 99% purely charitable goals, but then there's this one tiny section in their founding documents that mentions, I don't know, generating passive income for the founders?
Oh, rejection. Swift rejection.
Wow.
It has to be 100% focused on purposes that fit into the 4 legal categories of charity. Advancement of education is one of them. But if your governing documents have even a single purpose focused on, like you said, high-level revenue generation, or promoting the school's brand over its educational mission, or, and this is a huge one, serving the private interests of a specific group of people, the application is it's instantly flagged and rejected. The charity has to exist solely for the public.
Okay, so purity of mission, that's step 1. But here's where it gets really interesting for me. This is reason number 3. Your subject matter lacks educational value. I mean, how does the CRA define what even counts as education? Do they have, like, a list of approved subjects?
Well, they absolutely judge the merit of the subjects themselves. And that's, it's a very tricky line for a government agency to walk.
I'd say.
They will reject applications if the material is deemed, and I'm quoting here, frivolous, improper, harmful, irrational, illegal, or contrary to Canadian public policy.
That's an incredible spectrum. I'm just picturing a rejected application for, like, the School of Advanced Applied Theory on Flat Earth Science.
Yeah.
They just look at that and say, sorry, that contradicts established facts. That's irrational. Denied.
It's precisely that type of review.
Yeah.
The subject has to be considered useful. It has to provide knowledge or develop skills that lead to a tangible, charitable benefit for the public. So if your application is for a school dedicated to teaching the finer points of, say, tax evasion,
Probably not getting approved.
no, or a subject built entirely around deeply irrational beliefs with, no basis in verifiable fact, it just fails on the grounds of utility and legality.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. But let's move to reason number 2, because this goes beyond what you teach and into how you teach it, even if the subject is totally legit. The reason is, teaching materials promote a biased point of view.
Yeah, this is probably the most nuanced area, especially for subjects like history or political science or religious studies. A school can definitely teach from a specific perspective, say a particular religious viewpoint, but the content has to be, quote, reasonably objective and well-reasoned. The CRA is looking for balance.
So if a school is founded by, let's say, an advocacy group, they can teach courses related to their cause. But they can't just turn the classroom into a pure propaganda machine. Is that the line?
That is the critical distinction. The materials have to show a clear attempt to encourage awareness of different views so students can develop their own critical thinking skills.
And what are the disqualifiers?
Things like providing only one-sided, highly emotional or inflammatory materials, or intentionally distorting fact to push a specific narrative. You have to educate, not just persuade.
That sounds like a minefield when you're picking out textbooks.
Mm-hmm.
But I did see the sources mention an exception. You can promote generally accepted views that are for the public benefit.
Absolutely. The CRA isn't going to reject a curriculum for promoting, generally accepted societal goods.
So if your health class teaches that smoking is harmful,
You're fine.
or your civics course teaches that peace is preferable to war.
Also fine. Those are accepted views that advance public good. They don't count as prohibitive bias. They're really looking for evidence of deliberate, one-sided ideological warfare.
Okay, that wraps up the content test. The common thread here seems to be that charity means purity of purpose, utility of subject, and intellectual fairness in how you deliver it.
Precisely. And now we pivot. We go from what you teach to how you prove you're actually teaching it.
Yeah.
This is the administrative heart of the application, the structure test.
This is all about process and accountability.
Exactly.
So we're diving into reasons 4, 5, and 6. Let's start with reason 4. Your program lacks sufficient structure. I'm guessing this means they need a bit more than just a few paragraphs describing the school's goals.
Oh, much more. Simply making information available, even really excellent information, is not enough. Structure is the bedrock that proves intentional education is happening. The CRA needs to see 3 specific interlocking elements. First, a clearly defined educational goal.
Okay.
Second, a course outline or a teaching plan. And it has to be designed by qualified individuals. And crucially, third, the educational materials themselves. A thorough body of knowledge that actively work toward that goal.
So, to use an analogy, if I create the world's greatest, most comprehensive Wikipedia page on economic theory, that's amazing information, but it fails this test because it lacks that intentional structure.
And it fails. That's passive knowledge dissemination. It doesn't prove an educational process.
Right.
And that's a perfect lead-in to reason 5, which demands an even more active step. No legitimate, targeted attempt to educate.
So this is about proving engagement and adaptation, which has got to be much tougher to document than just a course outline.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is the requirement for adaptation. The materials can't just be prepared by experts. They have to be specifically adapted to meet the learning needs of your target audience.
So you have to consider their age, their education level.
Exactly. Their learning style, all of it.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all lecture note dump. If
Yeah.
you're teaching quantum physics to high schoolers, the materials had better reflect that. And you also need a process to ensure they're actually engaged, right?
You do. They look for proof. Things like mandatory registration, attendance tracking, or documentation of participation in structured activities. Just running a passive website with great resources fails. Mailing out pamphlets fails.
Because there's no documented, targeted, structured instruction.
Exactly. No proof that you're meeting the audience where they are.
And finally, under this structure test, we hit reason 6. Your program has no teaching or learning component. This is the accountability stage. You need instruction or evaluation or both.
Right. And we can break this down. The teaching component requires structured instruction by a qualified person and the opportunity for students to get feedback, to ask questions, get clarification.
The teacher has to be an active part of it.
Yes, an accessible part of the process.
So a self-study program where a student just reads a textbook cover to cover but never interacts with an instructor, that wouldn't fly.
That's right. And then you need the learning component.
The assessment.
The assessment, testing, evaluation, a demonstration of skill, some kind of formalized assessment of what they've learned. If you just provide materials for self-study with no way to check if learning happened, you fail.
The bureaucracy needs proof that the public benefit, the education, was actually delivered successfully. So if I had to boil down the whole structure test, it's about proving intentionality. You plan it with reason 4, you delivered it to the right people with reason 5, and you checked if it worked with reason 6.
A perfect summary. And now we move to the final and often the most explosive section, the beneficiary test.
Okay.
This looks at who, at the end of the day, is really benefiting from the school's existence. Is it the public, or is it the people running it?
This is where we get into reasons 7 through 10, starting with reason 7. Your beneficiary group is improperly restricted. Now, I assume a private school can charge tuition, they can have admission standards. Where's the line?
You can restrict based on educational merit or a student's ability to benefit from the program, but you absolutely cannot restrict based on personal connection.
What does that mean exactly?
Well, the source material is very clear.
Yeah.
Prohibited restrictions include things like benefits are only for named individuals, or benefits are only for people with a personal connection to the founders, the board members, or a single company.
So it can't be a private club.
It cannot be a private club for your family and associates.
So if the founders decide the school is only open to their grandchildren and the employees of their software company, that's a clear no.
That's a clear violation of the public benefit requirement, yes.
But there are acceptable restrictions.
Oh, sure. Things directly linked to the educational purpose. A school for advanced engineering can require an engineering degree. A school for hearing-impaired students can restrict enrollment that way. Geographic limits are also fine as long as the area is big enough.
Now, this brings up a really crucial societal point with Reason 8. Restrictions may be contrary to public policy. This is where charity law has to evolve with the times, doesn't it?
It really does. This rule reflects how the CRA has to ensure charities comply with contemporary Canadian values. We're talking about the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, provincial human rights laws. A restriction that might have been totally fine, legally or culturally, decades ago, can now result in an immediate rejection if it's based on prohibited grounds of discrimination.
Can you give us an example of how that might have shifted over time?
Well, historically, you might have had certain schools with restrictions based on gender or race or specific religious affiliations that promoted a stance of superiority over other groups.
Right.
The CRA now scrutinizes applications to make sure they aren't using charity status to promote discrimination or systems that are contrary to broad Canadian public policy. They're policing the societal impact.
Moving to the money side of things, Reason 9 is the classic pitfall, providing more than incidental private benefit. I'm guessing this is where the founders who saw the school as a lucrative side business get tripped up.
This is exactly where they trip up.
Yeah.
Look, inherent private benefit, a student paying a fee and getting an education, that's fine. It's expected. But any other private benefit has to be strictly incidental.
What does incidental mean in this context?
It has to be necessary, reasonable, and proportionate to the public benefit that results. This rule exists specifically to stop the public good from becoming a mask for private enrichment.
Okay, let's get into the weeds. What are the specific red flags the CRA zeroes in on here?
The red flags are classic nonprofit abuses. Excessive salaries or compensation paid to founders or directors that are way out of line with market rates for similar roles in the charitable sector. Another huge one is transactions with related parties. For instance, if the school leases its building from a family trust controlled by the founders, and the rent is inflated way above fair market value.
So if the school is basically just a cash funnel for the founders of their businesses.
It fails Reason 9. The CRA is essentially asking, are the public's tax dollars, which is what charity status provides, supporting education, or are they supporting the lifestyle of the founders?
They're very sensitive to a charity becoming a personal piggy bank.
Incredibly sensitive.
Yeah.
And rightly so.
And finally, the ultimate consistency check, Reason 10. Your activities don't actually further your charitable purposes. This is basically mission creep prevention.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Your operations have to match your mission statement. If your stated purpose is advancing academic education, but you spend 80% of your budget on, I don't know, extensive non-educational social events.
Or political lobbying.
Exactly. Or commercial activities that go way beyond the permitted limits. The CRA will look at that and say your actions don't align with your charitable mission.
So every dollar, every program has to faithfully point back to that exclusively charitable educational goal. If you want to be a charity, you have to act like one, not just write like one.
That's the core lesson of this entire list. Success hinges on proving that every single aspect of the school, its mission, its teaching methods, its governance, its finances, is all rigorously designed, documented, and executed for public benefit, not for private gain or ideological advocacy.
It's an immense amount of bureaucratic detail. But if a school gets rejected, is that it? Is that the end of the road for them?
Not at all, actually. The sources are pretty clear that rejection is often a procedural failure, a documentation failure, not a moral one. Many schools get registered on their second or even third attempt. They go back, they look at the CRA's detailed feedback, they refine their governing documents, they restructure their programs to meet these exact criteria.
So they add the assessment component they were missing.
Exactly. And they document their public benefit much more effectively.
Yeah.
The CRA's Charities Directorate actually provides guidance because they recognize this is a really complex legal process.
So what does this whole checklist of pitfalls mean for you, the listener?
Well, the legal definition of education is just. It's way narrower and much more structured than what we normally think of as learning or sharing knowledge. You can't just be a passionate expert sharing great information. You have to prove goal, structure, and accountability.
Which raises a fascinating final thought. If a nonprofit's fundamental goal is to truly advance knowledge? Is that formal requirement of assessment, the testing, the evaluation, the structured feedback, is that absolutely critical for proving public benefit in a legal sense? Or is it primarily a bureaucratic hurdle to stop the system from being abused?
Yeah.
Is education without some kind of demonstrable achievement truly charitable? Something to chew on.
Absolutely. That list certainly gives us a new appreciation for the complexities of running a school in Canada. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.